Hello, fellow gamer. It is I, Solar Cross, and in this video, I'm going to have a rant about the representation of our glorious human species in the game of Stellaris. And of course, I'm referring to the default representations of humans in the game, not in any sort of custom versions of humans, such as my Imperium of Mankind, which I'll deeper look into in another video, in a series of videos of how to do Warhammer 40k factions in Stellaris. But that's for another video. In this video, we're going to look at what I believe writers of Stellaris have got wrong about their idea of what humans are actually like. Two different human factions in the game. Of course, the Star Trek-esque version of humanity is the United Nations Ver, and the other one is the Commonwealth of Man, which is which has slightly opposite sort of ethics and politics. And we're not really going to talk about that because that's very variable. Politics of either of these two factions totally were potentially accurate as representing the way human civilizations could operate, right? What I'm specifically talking about is the physical human traits that they have decided for humans, which is the same in both of these factions, these default factions. You'll see their idea is that humans are adaptive, nomadic, and wasteful. And I don't really think that adds up. I think that's at least some of that is coming from a more sort of green Marxist sort of view of the world, which is basically an insane version of reality. It's not real. It's not reality based. The green environmental Marxist mentalities is it's about 90% insanity and 10% just Machiavellian scheming. It's not real. So what are human beings really like? Well, you have to realize everything's relative, isn't it? So you could say humans are warlike. You could say that, but compared to who? Like chimpanzees? Well, they fight each other quite a lot. Compared to ants, ants are very warlike. So you got to think about like what are we compared to something else? And that's a little bit of a problem because in Stellaris it's a game on the galactic stage, so we would be our special unique human traits would be in comparison to aliens, but we don't really know of any real aliens in the universe yet. We haven't heard any signals. We haven't been to any planets which are populated by technological aliens, and it has to be technological aliens. We're not just talking about primordial ooze or ant analogs. It's going to be species that can build spaceships, isn't it? So if there's any alien species out there that can build spaceships, Stellaris would be comparing. Our unique traits would be in comparison to that. But so we that would be a somewhat difficult thing to make a comparison with because we don't know they exist. But we could have some ideas of what they might be like based on the animals on our own planet. And there's quite a big diversity of animals. We've got everything from whales to slugs to ants and tigers. There's all sorts of animals we can compare ourselves with on this planet to get an idea of where our special unique traits, what makes us special, where do they sit, and this is a little bit flawed obviously because we're the only candidate for on this planet. We're almost the only candidate species for being a technological species that could do the Stellaris type game of building a galactic empire. No other species on our planet is looks like there's any chance they might do something like that, with the possible exception of ants maybe, but they're probably too small to ever build spaceships. They're probably just too small to ever do that. But they have certain semi-technological, or so they have a semi-technological society. They have a society, for example. They could call it a society where they have many numbers organized to work together towards a goal. So they have that kind of social element we have. And so a lot of our technology kind of relies on be able to have big social groups which specialize and work together. So maybe ants, some version of. I mean, a lot of sci-fi writers, when they're looking for something to be an alien, some idea for what an alien civilization could look like and be really alien to us, be not the same as us. Like Star Trek, everybody's just like humans with like plasticine stuck to their heads. Whereas, if you think about something like Starship Troopers, in Starship Troopers, the aliens are quite obviously copying the ants from our planet, or those kind of insects, those social insects, or there's the buggers from Ender's Game, for example, and it makes sense to do that because they're alien to us, so they make an alien species based an alien species based on ants is plausibly alien, right? In the way that Star Trek aliens are not plausible, while at the same time being sort of possibly capable. You can sort of imagine they could be potentially capable of technological type feats like spaceships and spaceports and colonies in the stars and things like this. But anyway, that's where I want to go. What are we like compared to what aliens could possibly be like, which we don't know for sure, and what we know about us compared to other creatures on our own planet, which we actually know because they're real creatures we've seen and met and know about. So how do we compare? How does our glorious human species compare to what are these traits? First of all, let's go first to what I think is actually not right about these three traits that the Stellaris writers have made for us humans. So the first one actually don't have a problem with, adaptive. That actually makes a lot of sense because our planet's a little bit variable, in terms of its environments. It's got, you might say in gamer terms, it's got a number of different biomes, you know. And if I just click into this, of course, if we look at the different planets, we can choose different planets. And even in this game, we've got a desert world, we've got an arid world, we've got a savanna world, we've got a wet world, we've got a continental world, a tropical world, a frozen world, an alpine world, and a tundra world. Well, arguably, and of course, Stellaris decides that Earth is a continental world, and it makes a lot of sense for us to be adaptive if we come from a planet like this, because a continent world is actually a world which has a little bit of all of these other worlds, right? It's got areas which are dry, it's got areas which are arid, it's got areas which are savanna, it's got areas which are ocean. We have a lot of ocean on our planet. And it's got areas which are tropical, and it's got areas which are frozen, such as Antarctica, and it's got mountainous regions as well. And it has, tundra world. A lot of Siberia is basically tundra, right? So, given that you can find humans in every corner of this planet, pretty much, you could make the case that we are adaptive. And I'm saying that even before we became technological, like Neanderthals, really. Not Neanderthals, but, Cro-Magnon, Paleolithic, Neolithic, whatever's your terminology. We'd already spread out over most of the world before we became like a high technological society, civilization. So we were adaptive, and not just because of technology, but also just because we seem to be adaptive, at least compared to other animals, for example, in our planet. So, I mean, if we were reptilian, if our biology was reptilian, we didn't have the ability to regulate our core temperatures, then, we'd be stuck to quite warm areas of the world, which, of course, is exactly what, you don't find snakes very much north of let's say, temperate areas in this planet. They just sort of just don't appear. Well, yeah. So, I mean, in general, we are quite adaptive. We're all over the place. So I guess I won't dwell on it, but it does look like I would say that's a fair trait for humans. I do think we are adaptive. And you can imagine if an alien had spawned, an alien technological species had spawned on a different kind of planet. Let's get back to it. Where is it? Um, a different kind of planet. Like if you were at a bit, if you had a planet, if you spawned on a planet, an alien technological species on a desert world, well, you'd be adapted for that, and you probably wouldn't. You'd be quite finely adapted biologically to that environment, and you would not do that well on a different planet, which had more different varieties of characteristics in terms of humidity and temperature and whatnot. I mean, because you're a technological species, you could do it because you'd have layers of technology in between you and the environment. But you know, yeah. So I agree with that. I think the adaptive trait is fine. That makes sense. Nomadic. Now, this I don't think is accurate. And I think maybe there's some sort of political propaganda in this. Because it's trying to say immigration is fine or something, maybe that's our true nature. But is it? Because like if you compare us to most animals on this planet, uh, we're actually very sedentary. We perhaps in when we were hunter gatherers we would move around a lot, and we didn't build permanent bases. But there's most animals on this planet are nomadic by default. Like they will just go wherever, they will just mine out an area and then move to another if there's nothing there for them. The only thing that stops them is they're not adaptive. So a snake which is adapted for hot, dry deserts. It doesn't have a permanent home. He could just go anywhere he likes, and he will. He's not settled, but at the same time, he's confined by his environment. So, and I don't think humans are like that really. I think we tend to, we tend to be. So, what is the opposite of nomadic? The opposite of nomadic would be territorial, wouldn't it? I mean, if you're territorial, you look at an area and you say that's mine, and you settle it, and it might even be an alien environment to you, like another planet, or a biome you're not adapted for, like Siberia, or the deserts of America or wherever, right? Um, but once you get to a place, we humans want to build. We want to build, and when you build, like you farm, you make a farm. So homesteading, all this stuff, the things that humans do that other animals don't really do on this planet, kind of makes us not nomadic. It actually makes us, I would say, it makes us sedentary. We are more sedentary than. So I'm going to put this up. Sedentary. Sedentary species are reluctant to migrate away from where they grew up. And I think that is actually how we are. Now, that's not to say we never migrate. Of course, we have done. We have filled up this whole planet by migrating. But we don't do it very regularly. It's kind of like a thing we do if we have to do, or, because we're pushed out of an area, we go reluctantly, essentially. And, a few of us might be adventurous and go, but mostly it's most of us just want to settle in a place and stay there forever. And maybe we go on holiday, but we don't really, we build our patch, build our community, we build our farms, our factories, and all this infrastructure is in one place. Yeah. So I would argue that yes, that's one thing that the Stellaris designers actually got wrong. I really don't think we are nomadic. I think we're sedentary, and it's just the sheer fact that we're adaptive that we've ended up all over the planet. Okay, so the other thing they gave for us is the trait wasteful. And again, I don't think that adds up. And the reason I say that is maybe like if you're they probably think this is the sort of green Marxist type point of view. They're probably thinking, well, we invented plastics. And what do we use for plastics? Well, we single-use packaging, basically. So the sort of things you buy a snack, Yeah, and it's got a wrapper on it, probably made of some kind of polymer plastic, and we rip off the plastic and we throw it away. Well, is that really fair? Because firstly, plastics haven't been around that long. They've only been around less than 100 years, and it's a technological invention. So you can't really compare that trait with other animals on this planet because they're all not technological. So they aren't inventing plastics. So they're not going to have that problem of, well, what do you do with it? Right? So, I mean, the huge advantage of plastic, of course, is that it doesn't biodegrade. That's kind of why it's useful because, it's got a sort of it doesn't rot the way other packaging might, for example, like paper, and it's got all sorts of advantages. So of course we're going to use it when we invent it, and but because it's a brand new material, there's a bit of a lag, isn't there? There's like, well, the long-term consequences of producing this material, and then what do you do with it? You just throw it away, and then you sort of the whole. Realistically, we should be looking at what to do with plastic long term, but that in itself doesn't make us wasteful because it's a technological thing. And other aliens on other planets, if they're doing any kind of material science, are going to be inventing new materials which don't biodegrade very easily, and they're going to make them exactly because they're not biodegradable. Because that's utility. If you make a thing and it doesn't rot, that's good, actually. So I don't think that adds up either. We're not wasteful because, I mean, what does it say here? What makes it the wasteful trait? What does it mean? How do we find that? Okay, so it says members of this species seemingly have no concept of frugality and are prone to useless consumption. Well, no, I don't think we're like that at all. I don't think we do. We can, if you get wealthy because of technology, then yeah, sure, you can consume a bit much if you want to. And probably I mean, we don't know what aliens would be like in that same context. We only know what animals on our planet are like. And are they wasteful? Well, they probably would be because, like, does a dog think about recycling? No, dogs don't think about recycling. They just eat and poop, right? The only reason they aren't making waste in the form of like plastics and things and other stuff is because they're not technological. They don't invent anything. They don't operate heavy machinery. They just don't do any of that stuff. And it's not because they're choosing not to do it because of their high principles or something. They just aren't clever enough. That's all it is. So yeah, humans are not wasteful. And I would suggest, probably the opposite. What is the opposite of wasteful? I would say probably it's maybe opportunistic or having a sort of holistic idea of how to use materials. And I think we do that. I think that's part of being technological. So it's very hard to say what aliens would be like, of course, because we don't know of any. But if they are out there and you're a technological society, you must A, do material science, which will cause you to create a lot of new materials, and you'll also be able to create relative abundance of goods and and things like this, and so you're going to be wealthy. And if you've got exotic materials and wealth, then you're probably going to have problems of what to do with that. So you're going to have that thing. You're going to have to go through that period of going from a pre-industrial civilization, which is not wasteful, right? Is very careful not to waste, to within a few hundred years being a technological society where you have these problems of overproduction and waste materials which don't recycle very easily and things like this. So possibly every alien species goes through this, and that means the human baseline is not weird, would not be weird, is not special compared to other aliens. So I don't think we're wasteful. And so just in Stellaris mechanics, that means we've got one trait point left and three potential trait points. So we've got a mix of negatives and positives we could add to fill it out. And so I'm just going to quickly go through what the options are, which I think might fit. And so I'm going to just go straight through. The first three are sort of bonuses to minerals, sort of your basic jobs, creating energy and food. I don't know that. I don't think any of those really apply for us because it is of course obviously compared to what an alien species would be like, and so those aren't really that relevant. Intelligence kind of interesting because obviously in on Earth we are probably by far the most intelligent animal on this planet. I mean, there's no other animal on this planet I'm aware of doing quantum mechanics, for example. You know, they're just not. So we are intelligent compared to animals on this planet, but out in a lot wider galaxy, obviously we're in a Stellaris context. All the other species are also going to be technological societies. They're also going to be building spaceships. They'll also be building spaceports. So they also have to have at least somewhat like some intelligence comparable to our own. Because if we can imagine doing it, then they must be also be doing it if they're going to be in the game. And so, are we intelligent? Could we be intelligent compared to other aliens? Well, I would argue it's possible, yes, because the universe is quite a bit old than our species. It's like 14 billion years, I think. And there are some stars out there that have been around that long and possibly have had planets around them that long. So there are probably aliens out there. You might say intelligent aliens capable of technology that have been around for a very long time. But when we look in the sky, you know, the old Fermi paradox kicks in, and it doesn't seem like there's anybody out there making like Dyson spheres and doing all these high technological things. So despite having a head start, all these civilizations around red dwarf stars, which have very, very long lifespans, much longer than our own sun's lifespan. Our solar system's sun or star is classed as a yellow dwarf, I think. That's right. And but that was back when stars were quite hard to find, and so it was a dwarf only compared to the very most brightest stars, which we now know are not very common. In fact, most stars in the galaxy are red dwarfs or orange or yellow stars. So our star is actually relatively big and relatively bright compared to a lot of stars. And so it's very likely that if there are a good chunk of the alien species that are capable of being spacefaring, of being participants in the Stellaris space drama, they would have been around a lot longer than us. It's very likely they have been. And yet they haven't done a lot. It's not apparent that they're way ahead of us, you know, because they haven't put spaceships down here. They haven't built giant structures in the sky like Dyson spheres and things like this. So it's possible we are more intelligent, that we learn faster. That's just maybe our special trait. Like if you imagine maybe there was a bit more of like an ant-like alien on a planet around a red dwarf, maybe after like say it might be their civilization took 2 billion years to get to space to develop the technology to do space transfer out to other planets. Whereas, you know, it looks like we've gone from Stone Age to the Space Age in a few thousand years. So I think there's a case we could be intelligent. I'm not going to put this in because I think it's debatable, you know, but there is a case I think you could make for us being probably more intelligent than average compared to alien species, if there be any out there. Thrifty, so in Stellaris terms, this is a species that's good at trade, and the trade mechanics in this game are a bit weird, and I don't know that I would really think that's a thing for us. Um, I suppose if you compare us to animals on this planet, we are trade very much able to do trade. The trade is definitely a feature of how we operate. I mean, ants don't trade really, you know. They not internally, perhaps you could say they trade, but they fight everything outside of their. They just you know what I mean. They don't do deals very much. Like give a little, take a little with other species. They just go. They just make war and kill and take whatever they can. Internally, you could say they trade, but there's a case that you could make the case perhaps that an ant colony or a bee colony is not so much a society of individuals as just one organism with limb appendages which can are semi-mobile, something like that. Anyway, so natural engineers, natural physicists, natural socialists, these are basically subtypes of intelligence. It just gives you a bonus to specific kinds of research. Don't know that we can really say much more about these specialist ones compared to just intelligence, so I'm not going to go there. Now, I think we're starting to get into some now with rapid breeders and slow breeders. I think that's probably a relevant one. See, compared to a lot of creatures on this planet, we are slow breeders, and not just because we're quite big animals as well. Like elephants, for example, are a big animal. They also would be classed as a slow breeder, perhaps. But we have like an 80-year lifespan typically, and we tend to knock out maybe four if we're sort of if things are going well, we might knock out four kids. Each individual might be a parent to four kids over a lifespan. That's not very much compared to say a lot of animals on our planet, especially like insects and things like that. So it's possible we are slow breeders. I think that you could make a case that we're slow breeders. I don't think there's a case that we're fast breeders. But again, this is in the context of the galaxy, though. Are we fast or slow breeders? It's hard to say, really. It might be that, in general, technological aliens have to be somewhat large in size, like us. And in that case, that might tend to make them all somewhat slow breeders in compared to the other life forms on their home planets. So it might be typical for technological species to be slow breeders within the context of their home planet. But on the galactic stage, there's all sorts of unknowns about that. So it's hard to say. I don't think there's anything to say we could be rapid breeders. I don't think that fits us at all. But slow breeders, it's possible. But again, it really depends on what other aliens are like in the galactic stage. And yeah. So, what else we got? Talented members of this species are born with a natural aptitude. And what that actually does is leaders tend to have less likely to have negative traits, and also leader upkeep is a bit less, which potentially could mean you have more leaders to you can employ, or more choice of leaders for your various things, forces in like admirals of fleets and people who operate science ships and whatnot in the game. So, are humans like this? Compared to other animals on our planet, I think you probably make a case that we have that because at least, especially, I would say, perhaps European people more than other types of human. We're quite individually motivated and individually specialized. Like, I mean, if you compare us again to ants, um, ants don't have leaders, really, do they? I mean, even the queen is kind of, I suppose the queen would count as a leader of an ant colony, but she's not individually variable compared to other queens. They all sort of come out the same. And so individual specialism is possibly what I'm reading from Talented as a game trait. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe you've got a different view on that, but I think you could make the case we have that. And quick learners, again, in the galactic context, it's very hard to say. So I'll leave that. Slow learners again is the same. Are we slow learners compared to certainly, I mean, compared to animals on this planet, we are quick learners because our brains have got a high level of plasticity. You know, you could imagine a species, an alien species that are instinctively capable of space technology in some way, kind of like the orcs of the Warhammer 40,000 universe. Like the orcs are not quick learners, and not because and not they're not exactly what I'm saying. I'm not saying they're stupid, but they don't have as much plasticity to their brains because all their technology is kind of genetically coded in. So it kind of just happens as a as a byproduct of their biology almost. And of course they were designed that way. They were genetically engineered, if you know the deep lore of the orcs. Um, but so you could make a case that orcs are not quick learners because of this. They don't have that kind of plasticity that our brains do. And I think if you want to look at evidence of plasticity in humans, especially compared to other animals on this planet, then what you're going to see is the ability to override instincts, biological, genetic instincts. And I think you can see a lot of evidence of that we do that. I mean, you have to look at religions like Christianity. Um, Christianity, whether you like it or not, has got some memes in it which are quite anti-biological in terms of instincts. Like everyone's got an instinct to stay alive, right? So why would you want to be a martyr? Like it, you, but in I you and but that happens. You have Christian martyrs, saints, and whatever. And at least if they were real people, what they did, allowing themselves to be brutally murdered instead of repudiating Jesus and things like this, that suggests their mind is able to override their actual natural biological instinct to stay alive instead of dying horribly. So, quick learners, I think there's definitely a case for that. Slow learners, probably not. I would say that's more of an orky thing. I would say, and traditional again. So what that actually means. So certain aspects of this species' cognition makes it predisposed to especially value historical precedents and group unity. And what in game that gives you a bonus to unity from jobs that do produce unity. Are humans like that? I don't. Probably not. Probably not. I don't think we have that. That we do value our history, and that you certainly can find people who are traditional, but as a species trait, I don't think that is. Or maybe. I mean, it obviously depends compared to the aliens in the galaxy, which of course is an unknown factor. But I suppose if you're just looking at this planet, we are probably in some ways more traditional than a lot of animals because most animals don't have a history. They don't remember the past. They don't make stories. They don't really have a good group unity. They might form groups like chimpanzees have war bands, don't they? And lions have social groups, but they're very small. They're almost nuclear families, really, or at best extended family. They're not large like nations, the nations that humans build. I mean, and a national identity can number in millions and millions of people who all think they're on the same team. That's no other animal does that. No other animal, not even ants. Ants don't do that. That's really super social thing. So yeah, maybe we could be traditional. I'm kind of making two different cases there against for and against. Quarrelsome again. If you make the case that we are traditional, then we're not quarrelsome. That we are. That we probably. Yeah, I don't think so. But again, of course, on the galactic stage, could we be? We might be, because it might be being super social is a requirement to being a high technological species that can travel the stars. That only super social creatures can do that. Maybe that's a filter in a way against anything that's not traditional. In which case, none of the aliens will be quarrelsome compared to animals in general. But compared to each other, we could be more quarrelsome than average. Like, perhaps most aliens are more conformist or they're more super social. So, yeah, I think there's a case that could go either way there. Docile? So, docile members of this species are easy to manage and organize. They tend to be cooperative and amicable. And what that does is that reduces empire size from pops. I think that you can make a case that humans are quite docile compared to other animals on this planet because we do tend to cooperate, we do tend to allow ourselves to be organized and managed. That has been how we've developed from our hunter-gatherer days. That's probably when it began, this kind of sociable, and it's worked for us, and that's sort of selected for those traits. I don't think you can build deep hierarchies of millions of people unless you are a bit docile. So that's possible. I think that's possible. But again, on the galactic stage, that really depends on, is super sociability a prerequisite to becoming a spacefaring species, as well as just being very intelligent. Like, I mean, you could imagine an alien species that maybe they just have gigantic intelligence in each individual, but they just don't cooperate. They're very individualistic to the point of being like mad um, preppers that live alone in the forest. But because they're just so brainy and maybe they use automation a lot, even individuals can still build spaceships and I don't know, whatever kind of space technology that enables you to become a Stellaris type civilization. So they might be, in that way, unruly. They would be classed as unruly. They would be difficult to manage and organize into groups, and they would not like being told what to do, and are often quarrelsome or questioning. And that would, in the game terms, that would mean their empire size from pops is increased. So makes them inefficient at in terms of empire size penalties. That could happen, maybe, but I would, it's very likely that super sociability is required. That's just probably the fast path to the stars, because spaceships are big projects. They are big projects that requires a lot of intelligence, a lot of specialization would have to go into a spaceship. And so you probably would expect all technological species to have a certain amount of what Stellaris calls docility, being docile. Very strong. So the next trait we got is very strong. Members of the species possess a strength that almost defies the laws of physics. No, I don't think we rank as notably strong compared to other animals on this planet. Um, yeah, I think arguably we're the nerds of the species on this planet. We're not crazy strong. We can attain great strength through technology, but that's not our individual bodies. But of course on the galactic stage again, is that relevant? I don't know. Are we strong compared to aliens? I mean, if the aliens all look like the Greys, if they were like that tall and had giant heads, we would be very strong compared to them. But we're not strong compared to, say, gorillas or something. So, no, we're probably none of them. Weak, again, kind of depends what the aliens are like. We are not weak compared to the Greys, but we are weak compared to space gorillas. Communal. Are we communal? Members of this species are highly communal and quite used to living in close proximity to others. It can kind of go that can kind of go either way, I reckon. We're less communal than ants, probably. And we're individually variable, of course. Like I'm not a communal person. I enjoy me time on my own. But I have autism, so I personally would be solitary, not communal. But other people, they're a bit more used to perhaps living on top of each other, and they've adapted to that sort of thing. Living like an ant in an ant hive or a bee in a beehive. I mean, if you say communal, that's what I'm thinking of. I'm not thinking of a detached house. I think humans, if we can afford it, we will we will be as relatively solitary as we can afford to be in terms of our housing. If we can afford it, yeah, like if you had more money, would you buy a bigger house or for yourself, or would you buy a big house and invite a lot of other people to live with you? You probably wouldn't do the latter thing. You'd just buy a bigger house and have more space for yourself. So that would make you solitary, I would say. Leaning towards solitary rather than communal. But again, that's compared to our animals on this planet. We might be more communal than some animals. Right, tigers are not communal, are they? So yes, that sort of depends on what aliens are like, and we don't know. We just don't know about that. Charismatic. So members of this species have a special charisma and are considered greatly considered pleasant to be around. Compared to, so that gives us a bonus to amenity jobs. Yeah, maybe we could be. I mean, there's quite a lot of people who are employed in our civilization doing things which are just like service orientated. Everything from, sex workers to pop stars and things like this. I don't know. I don't know. I think, yeah, it's hard to say. We probably have good social skills. I think that's what it means. So, yeah, we could go either way on that one. I don't know about repugnant, actually. I think repugnant, what would a repugnant alien be like? I think probably violent, bit rude. Um, you couldn't try, you wouldn't be comfortable around them because you wouldn't know where they were going to eat you or something. So, yeah, I don't know. We're probably not repugnant, but maybe we're not charismatic compared to aliens either. Conformists. So these people always seek consensus and are more likely to conform to the governing ethics. Um, Kind of a difficult one. In a galactic context, we can't tell what the aliens are like compared to, so the opposite is deviants. Deviants tend to do the opposite of this. So if the government is militaristic, they want to be peaceniks, and if the government is peaceniks, then they want to be um, the opposite. They want to be militaristic. So whereas conformists just sort of follow the leader, right? Whatever the leader says. Does the leader say peace, then they want to be peaceful. If the leader says war, they want to be warring people. That kind of thing. We can't tell. We really can't tell without knowing aliens. But on this planet, we probably are more deviant than we are conformist, I think, especially European people. Now, if you're talking Chinese people, East Asian people, I think you could call them conformists because they do tend to seem um, more inclined to just follow the leader. I think you get that kind of, they've, you know, whereas maybe Africans a bit more are not conformists. They're more like us Europeans in a way. They're sort of not prone to agreeing with each other about things or following the leader. They like to sort of disagree with the boss. Possibly, you disagree with the boss because you want to replace the boss. So being a deviant sort of correlates probably with being ambitious and something like that. I don't know, maybe because there's another way to be ambitious, and that is to conform to a group ideology in order to seem to be trustworthy for going up in the hierarchy in the group. So actually, maybe deviants are more individualistic and less group orientated. Actually, that's probably more right. Actually, venerable. So long lifespan. This species can grow to an age that commands dignity and respect. Well, on this planet, we aren't really. It's disappointing. I sort of feel like for our size, we're not that long lived. Um, there might be something wrong with our genetics. Like there is a theory, this is a bit of a tangent. There is a theory that humans are so weird compared to other chimpanzees because we had a hybridization event millions of years ago with pigs. Look it up. Honestly, it's a real PhD came up with this theory, and it makes a lot of sense in some ways. If you look into it, you'll see. But anyway, hybrids, we tend to think of hybrids as producing infertile young, but actually, that's not really true. Quite often they can be fertile, but it's usually lower fertility, which would again play in with our slow breeder trait if we picked that. But it would also give us a somewhat ropey genetics, resulting in not as long a lifespan as perhaps we could have compared to other animals. And there are other animals, dumb animals, just living in the wild, buck naked in the wild, who have longer lifespans than us, quite a lot, much longer. For example, the Greenland shark is said to live 400 years, and parrots, they're only like little, but they can live 80 years. And there's tortoises, giant tortoises, which can live for hundreds of years. Trees some trees can live thousands of years. So I think we might even be short-lived. You could make a case that we are the candle that burns twice as bright, but for only half as long. I think we could have the fleeting trait even. As sad as I am to report that, as a person who aspires to become a multi-centenarian one day, I do have to worry that maybe our genetics, our base human genetics, is a little bit prone to a shortish life compared to what it could be for an animal of our size. But obviously, technology could change that, and aliens are likely to have that. Also, spacecraft. You know, aliens with a spacefaring capability are likely also to have genetic engineering which can alter lifespans. But their baseline longevity is quite possibly longer than ours if they were not the product of hybridization in their genetic history. So I would say that those two are probably not the case, and there's a case to be made for it being fleeting, which gives a which gives a leader lifespan of minus 10 years. So the decadent trait. This species believes that whenever there is hard work that needs doing, that work is always best done by somebody else. No, I don't think humans are like that at all. I think that's untypical. I think uh, we tend to be quite industrious, and obviously we're all tempted by laziness of trying to get other people to do things for us instead. We have moochers, but it's not normal. It's not normal for people to be moochers. Most of us probably are want to be seen to pull our weight, want to be thought of as a good person in the team. So moochers tend to be a minority, so we're not decadent, I would say. Resilience. So, members of this species are physiologically resilient and will fight like enraged brood mothers to defend their worlds. Yeah, I mean, they got a picture of an armadillo there, so I'm not sure what that might look like for us. Are we resilient compared to animals on this planet? Probably not. Like, I would say, I mean, we will defend our property, so there's a willingness to fight defensive wars. But are we physically resilient compared to a sort of intergalactic baseline? I'm going to say probably not that one. Conservationist. Members of species believe that resources must be conserved and recycled. I actually think you could make a case that we do have that because like if you just sort of take a break from worrying about microplastics for a moment, most of at least our technological life has been about reusing things, and recycling things. It's quite normal, actually. Um, and that's part and part of being a technological species. I think you have to be very, when you are a technological species, you are always doing stuff with materials, metals and wood and glass, and you're recycling things quite often, I would say. So we're probably not like that. So obviously that's the opposite of Wasteful, which was the Stellaris default. I think you could make a case that humans are naturally conservationists, and this whole thing about plastics right now, and single-use plastics and things, is more of a just a temporary glitch in our DNA, our civilizational practice. It's just because these are very new materials, and we haven't quite got our head around what to do with all this superabundance of brand new materials that don't recycle very easy. They're not economic. I mean, the thing is, we would recycle plastic for the same reasons we recycle glass and metals. We always have. It's just that plastics are so cheap to make, but more expensive to recycle than metal, for example. We've been reusing metals over and over forever. That's just completely normal. And for most of our history, metals is probably our main signature technological material science, even more than pottery and ceramics. You know, that's what we make our. You know, the ages of history are defined by the are defined by our metals mostly. Like we say, the Iron Age and the Bronze Age and the so on. So yeah, I think we're more conservationist than wasteful. You might think it's a stretch to say conservationist is a natural trait for humans, but I think you can make a case for that. Now here's a fun newish one: existential interperarity. And what this does, this species grew up in hostile conditions where outbreeding your rivals was the key to survival. Um, I don't think humans are notably fast breeders, but I think there is some evidence emerging now that we do get more horny in dangerous circumstances. That unstable political situations make us, or more threat of danger, mortality salience is a technical term, does make us more willing to breed. And that the opposite trait, which is psychological infertility, members of this species are extremely sensitive to the rigors of conflict and the resulting stress taking over their more primal urges. So psychological infertility makes a species breed less when there's not a war on, when there is a war on. So that I would say that doesn't apply, this psychological infertility. But overall, we are not prone to breeding a lot, and we are quite, I would say, slow breeders. But we are more likely to breed when things are dangerous, it seems like. And the evidence for this could be the current crash in the birth rates across the whole world, as we've had a lot of peace in the last for the Western world. The Western world's been at peace, certainly, really, since the end of World War II. There have been the odd conflict, but no one in Europe generally feels like they could die any day from a bomb or something. Most people just feel pretty safe in that respect. Now that might change in the future, but currently that's how it has been since the end of World War II. And it seems to correlate with a complete crash in birth rates. So we probably have something like existential interoperability, in a sense that we kind of need things to be a bit unstable, a bit scary, in order to feel like it's time to have kids. You know, Because I might die, and if I die, then I'll miss my chance. But if you think you're going to live forever, you feel safe and secure, then you think, oh well, should I go to university or should I have a kid? Well, you're probably going to think, well, I'll go to university and I won't have a kid, or I'll just focus on my career, and then when I'm ready to retire, I'll have a kid. That's kind of how you think, right? Literally, people think like that. And of course, by the time that comes around, they're basically infertile and they can't have kids. Oh, I'm 50 now. I've devoted myself to my career because there's no rush to have kids. I'm safe. I'm going to live forever. And then, you don't have kids because even though you can afford it, you spend your whole life making money, you can't, your biology's just not up to it. So, yeah, we're probably more like existential interpolarity than the other one. Is there anything else to say about that? No. Jinxed are prone to having leaders with bad traits. I don't think that's probably not a relevant one. Incubators, no, we don't do that. That's just not a thing yet. Maybe in the future, that might be a thing we do, but not currently. And inorganic breath, no, that's not us. Noxious, extremely unpleasant to be in the vicinity of. Beings with this trait take vindication from being insufferable to everyone else. Well, no, we're not like that. In fact, in a weird way, we're probably the most least noxious creature on this planet because we have, like, we haven't met any technological aliens, but we have genuine friendships with other animals on this planet, which you don't really see in the wild between other animals very much. Like, human beings are really not a single species civilization already. We have, we are dogs and horses and cats and cows and even the ones that are providing food for us. We have a kind of, they're part of our civilization. They have a role in our civilization. And we even have social relationships with, like, especially dogs and cats and things. So we're a multi-species species. We're a multi-species civilization. We're a species which is amenable to that. And we like to look after our animals. So we don't take pleasure in causing them suffering, generally. There's obviously the odd weirdo that might torture animals, but most of us quite like to look after our dogs and our cats and our horses. So aquatic trait, obviously not relevant. We don't live in the sea. Extremely adaptive. That is relevant because we all agree that we are adaptive. So it could be that we are extremely adaptive. That's just taking that trait and making it stronger. But I think we'd probably have to be more physically robust to qualify it as extremely adaptive. And a lot of our adaptiveness comes from wearing clothing. Like, that's how we stay warm in the cold biomes, and it's how we stay hydrated to a certain extent in the hot biomes, the desert biomes. So yeah, and you could argue clothing is a technology rather than like a personality trait. Like, probably most aliens would at some point invent they would have to invent clothing even just to do to travel in space for most of them, because space is the ultimate harsh environment. So you can't just walk around, or fly around in space without a suit. You've got to have a suit, and that's a kind of clothing. So yeah, I'm rambling a bit here. Non-adaptive? No, I don't think we are non-adaptive. A non-adaptive creature would have to be something that's adapted to a very an environment which doesn't ever change. It's always the same temperature. It's always the same humidity. It's always the same, and I don't think our planet's really had a history like that. So that's not us. Nomadic, already covered that. Don't think we are nomadic. We tend to settle. We can move, obviously. We will move. We're not plants, like rooted to the ground, but we compared to most creatures on this planet, I would say we tend to stick in one place once we find a place we like. And we build. We build houses, we build skyscrapers, and so on. So we don't tend to move about that much. And phototropic, no, you kind of have to be doing photosynthesis to do that, I guess. Radiotrophic, there is a bacteria in Chernobyl they've discovered, or is it a mold or a fungus or some creature that seems to be living off of the ambient radiation. So that is possible. There is creatures that can do that, but it's not us, obviously. Budding, again, we don't do that. And in final one is invasive species. That's interesting, actually. We aren't by this strict definition, but I think some could argue a sort of, you could take an anti-human perspective on this planet and say, well, human beings, you know, we evolved for the African savanna or whatever, but we've ended up in every part of the world. So we are an invasive species in a way, because we've gone everywhere and we've taken over every environment as well. Pretty much. Not everywhere in the world. Obviously, the oceans, not so much. We do extract resources from the oceans, but we don't really live there. But everywhere else, the deserts, the mountains, the tropics, the temperate areas, the cold areas, you can find humans in every environment on this planet. So we're kind of like an invasive species in a way, yeah. But we don't have rapid reproduction. And I think zero useful capabilities is a bit too harsh for us as well. So no, we're not that. So what are we left with? I'm going to go back through this and say what I think the actual human traits should be. And I'm willing to stick with adaptive. And I think sedentary is better than nomadic. But what else? Because we can add a few more. And I think, what did we say? We did say slow breeders. I think we could have that. And that's negative one, quite a strong negative one now. So we can pick up some quite strong positive ones if we keep that. And conformists, I don't think that's us really. Yeah, looking through it, I'm not sure if I can find anything. Maybe we can put intelligent. I know it might sound a bit cheeky, but I think I did make the case before that our technological abilities has grown very fast. I mean, I can certainly imagine a creature somewhat more like a chimp, you know, it's got hands, it's got less of a brain, eventually becoming spacefaring if you just gave them 2 billion years to evolve the technology. But what we've done, we've gone from, you know, stone tools to space rockets in a few thousand years. So maybe that's evidence of us being quite intelligent on the even compared to the galactic context. That could be. We could stick in intelligent. I wouldn't say that's a bad choice. I think there's a case to be made for it, certainly. And what does that do for our trait points? We got 1 and 1. So we 1 point left and 1 pick left. So we get a small positive. So what would that be? Potentially we could pick traditional. I think I made a case against it, but I think you could make a case for as well. And I don't know what else we can put. Yeah, I don't know. There's much else that's fitting. So maybe what we'll do, we'll get rid of intelligent and slow breeding, and maybe we'll have talented. Okay, so at the risk of getting myself, let's say, or making a few people angry. No, I won't go there. I won't go there. Yeah, maybe in my other channel I might speculate about some things, but I'm not going to do it now. Not in this video, because the prevailing culture is kind of hostile to free thought at the moment. So there's a sort of there's an ideology that's fighting for its survival, and people call it woke or whatever, and it's getting quite nasty and desperate. And you know, maybe in 10-20 years we can have a sort of realist discussion about, let's say, the human genetic diversity. But at this point, that's not a thing that can really happen. So, not on this platform anyway. So we won't go there. We won't go there. So what are your thoughts on my particular prescription for representing or a human beings in the game of Stellaris, their species traits specifically, not really looking at government or ethics or anything like that, just specifically the human traits. Now, this formula meets the points requirements. We still got 2 more trait picks we could pick, but the trait points zero out, which is what you want. You want a balance of negative and positive, which comes to 0 in the end. So what do you think? Adaptive? I gotta say, that's obvious. I think that's obvious. We are obviously adaptive. Because even before we were technological, we had already spread all over the planet. So we are definitely able to adapt to different environments. Sedentary, I think, while of course we do move from one place to the other, I think in our preference is generally to settle and to build. And when you build, there gets a point where you can't move. You know, you've got a house. Like most people, if you just pick any random person in my country, and you know, most of them would like to own their own home. Well, you can't move homes. Like, if you got a choice between living in a caravan and living in a home, most people would choose the home, even if it's more expensive than the caravan. Now, if you're a true nomad, you would prefer to live in the caravan because that means you can move, right? So I think we are sedentary. I think, and I don't think that's just specifically a European trait. I think the Chinese have got that as well, and everyone, except maybe some tribes that, like maybe in the Native Americans, had to be nomadic because their technology levels just couldn't allow them to stay in one place too long because they would starve. But if given the chance, I think we tend to sit in one place if we can and build up around it, build up our stuff around this place we like. So we are sedentary. I think that's a great case that we are sedentary. Talented is a bit sketchy. I don't know. Maybe not. But I think we are quite individually variable compared to most creatures on this planet. And because of that, that means we tend to have unique individuals with super talents. Amongst us, you know, people that are amazing athletes like Usain Bolt or something, or great statesmen who can like charismatically lead millions to the slaughter of millions, like Comrade Stalin, you know, or Oliver Cromwell or things like this. So I think we tend to produce leaders and who, compared to other animals on this planet, which, you know, one lion is much like another lion. They don't have that kind of special propensity to knock out special, super talented members of the species, and that goes for ants and other sociable creatures as well, like chimpanzees and things. Our high individual variability is what gives us our tendency to knock out super talented individuals who can lead us into a brighter tomorrow. You're right. So there you go. What do you think about all that? That's my thoughts here. There's obviously other ways we could do this. I think you could say we could definitely swap out slow breeders for one of these. Maybe we could even go super adaptive. What do they call it? Because that's to make the points balance. We could do a lot of... if we threw in slow breeders alongside highly adaptive, that might, you know, balance out quite well. Let me know in the comments what you would do, what you would change, or even if you want to make a case that I'm wrong and that the Stellaris version of humanity is the most fitting. Let me know in the comments and share this on the interwebs if you think this video might be of interest to other people. You could also check out my channel and see my other videos. I do have a few other Stellaris videos. You could check out my blog if you like, specifically Stellaris content. I've got a lot of Stellaris content on my blog. Not so much on my channel yet, but there will be more coming. This is just one iteration of the process of adding Stellaris content to my channel. So anyway, bye for now!